Good day. I am Lucy Ann Joy David, the first presenter of Group 3. In today's discussion, we will talk about the preamble of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So let us start defining the meaning of the term preamble. What is a preamble? So the term preamble is derived from the Latin word preambulare, which means to walk before. It means it walks before a document. It is an introduction to the main subject. It is the prologue of the Constitution. It gives the reader an idea of what to expect in the document. It reflects values and ideals that are expected from Constitution and people who follow it. It explains the objectives of the document and the underlying philosophy. So now let's have the preamble not essential in Constitution. So what does it mean? Preamble not essential in a Constitution. Preamble is an integral part of the Constitution, but integral doesn't mean essential. There is some difference. Integral means something necessary to make a whole complete. For example, legs and hands are integral part of our body, but not essential because we can live without them. But a functional brain or heart is essential as well as integral because we cannot live without them. It is just like the Constitution. Similarly, in Constitution, since preamble is just a preface or introduction, even if we remove this, still our Constitution does hold a value and have an existence. Constitution can exist even without a preamble. The preamble alone cannot be invoked as a source of private right enforceable by the courts or of any governmental power that expressly granted or at least clearly implied. Therefore, it is significant to note, however, that a majority of the constitutions of the world contain a preamble. Now let's have the object and value of preamble. The first one, it sets down origin and purposes of the Constitution. While a preamble is not a necessary part of a constitution, it is advisable to have one. In the case of the Constitution of the Philippines, the preamble, which is couched in general terms, provides the broad outline of and the spirit behind the Constitution. It sets the spirit for national governance and it outlines the overarching goals. It serves two very important ends. The first one is it tells us who are the authors of the Constitution and for whom it has been promulgated. And lastly, it states the general purposes which are intended to be achieved by the Constitution and the government established under it, and certain basic principles underlying the fundamental charter. So the first object and value of the preamble tells in what spirit the Constitution was created, what the general goal was, and what was the idea behind its creation.
I am going to continue the report of Miss Lucy Ann J. David, and for number 2, it may serve as an aid in its interpretation. The preamble has a value for purposes of construction or interpretation of the meaning of constitutional provisions. The statement of the general purposes may be resorted to as an aid in determining the meaning of vague or ambiguous provisions of the Constitution proper. By way of illustration, the government is without power to impose taxes for private purpose because, according to the preamble, it is established for public purpose, the promotion of the common good, and not for private purpose. The preamble, let's break it down. The source of Constitution's authority, the Filipino people. The Constitution begins with the word we, the sovereign Filipino people, imploring the aid of Almighty God, and ends with the word to ordain and promulgate this Constitution. Thus, the Filipino people themselves, not just their representatives, are the source from which the Constitution comes, and being so, it is the supreme law of the land. The preamble retains the use of the term Filipino people to signify their oneness and solidarity It is different from the term people of the Philippines, which may refer to the entire body of inhabitants, a mere aggregation of individuals, including aliens. So it stresses the fact that constitutional in the Philippines. And for number 2, a sovereign people. The Constitution calls the Filipino people sovereign. The first person approach consisting of the use of the pronouns we and our has also been retained instead of the impersonal third person approach. The Filipino people and their. In the preamble of the 1935 Constitution, the intention is to stress that the Filipino people in ordaining and promulgating the Constitution do so on their own authority as a sovereign people and not by virtue of authority or permission given by a superior people. So, in here, we are the one who has an authority as the being a Filipino citizens and not by the foreign countries. As stated in the first part of the preamble, we, the sovereign Filipino people. So for the next topic, belief in God's trust. Our preamble is in the form of a collective prayer. The Filipinos are intensely religious people. In imploring the aid of Almighty God, for the first part of the preamble, they declare and affirm their belief in the existence of a supreme being that guides the destinies of men and nations. They acknowledge the overruling power of God over the affairs of nations and all human beings. They recognize the fact that with the help of a personal God, to whom they are all accountable, they will be able to achieve the ideals and aspirations to which they are committed, particularly in laying a strong foundation for building a just and human society, which is not possible in a godless society. In a sense, they acknowledge God as the source of their authority. So we, as a Filipino people, we are predominantly Christians and partly Muslim nation in Asia and East Pacific region. Christianity and Islam are the two leading religions of mankind that coexist in the Philippine society today. Islam came to the southern Philippines, and the introduction of Christianity to the Filipinos began in 1565 when Miguel Lopez de Legazpi came to colonize the Philippines. Thank you for listening. Ms. Agnes Manabat will continue the report, The National Purposes and Aims in Adopting the Constitution.
National purposes and aims in adopting the Constitution. As set forth in the preamble, they are: the first one is to build a just and humane society. Just society, on the other hand, is the one that favors the common good before anything else. Justice is the prime virtue that is shown here. Human society, on the other hand, is the one that prioritizes dignity and respect for the human person. Now, let's proceed with the second one, which is to establish a government that shall embody our ideals and aspiration, promote the common good, conserve and develop our patrimony, and lastly, secure to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of independence and democracy, under the rule of law and regime of truth, justice, freedom, love, equality, and peace. Now, let's proceed with the attainment of the constitutional goals. The first one is the root cause of our present problems. After more than half century of independent existence, the Philippines continues to be the best with pressing economic, political, and social problems, usually associated with the term underdeveloped. To be sure, every administration has been responsible, one way or another, for the slow progress of our country. A simple analysis will reveal that the root cause of our country's problem can be traced to a large extent to the government machinery itself. For example, is the graft and corruption. Graft and corruption are charges that are typically leveled at high-placed government officials who are able to use public funds to improve their own fortune. When an official uses access, influence, knowledge, or power that comes with an elevated position and engage in graft, they use public trust and may be charged with crimes. The second one is the excessive partisan politics. A partisan is a committed member of a political party. In multi-party system, the term is used for person who strongly supported their party's policy and are reluctant to compromise with political opponents. The third one is the blunders in economic policies. And lastly, the mismanagement. Moving on to our next topic, we have the government and vision by the Constitution. These have two goals. The first one is to build the kind of society and establish the kind of government set forth in the Preamble. It's attainable only if the government actually established is one of the character and vision by the Constitution. Refers that the government must be democratic based on the consent of the governed, and it must be not only in its structure but more importantly in its operation. It is based on Article 2, Section 1. For instance, it is not enough that laws are just and humane. They must be applied justly and humanely. Or for example, in a periodic election, they must be clean and orderly and must accurately reflect the will of the electorate. Next, we have the government must be administered by honest, competent, and dedicated men and women who consider public office as a public trust, which is based on the Article 9, Section 1. And lastly, we have the government must be responsive to the people's needs and expectation, exercising power and authority in view only of the common good, always guided and controlled by the laws and the Constitution.